You're looking at BatchMaster, and it's run on SAP Business One, which is our ERP platform. And what we're going to see today is how we bring our world-class process manufacturing, how it leverages SAP Business One's native ERP functionalities to give you that end-to-end that we're talking about, covering everything from purchasing to formulation to production, quality, sales, and then all the reporting, financials, and control on top of that. That's a lot of ground to cover, but what I'm ultimately going to demonstrate to you is only what's available as part of the Express Quick Start package. Once you've gone live with Express, you can add other additional functionality. So there's a lot of functionality in the system I'm not showing you, like if you wanted to have, say, an integration to your e-com site. So that would all be things that we'd scope out after you go live. So in this case, what you see is what you get. As you can see, logged in as super user, so I've got access to everything. Even in Express, though, permissioning is key. So we'll work with you to make sure that your users only see what they're supposed to. So customer service will see a different set of screens from production and so on. And all of that is controlled by user group and user level permissions. So if this is your desktop, you'll see a number of widgets and KPIs and process diagrams and dashboards, which sort of come out of the box. All of this will allow you to get a quick picture of what your particular role is at. When you log in as a quality user, you're going to see a different screen, but really what is coming to you with the Express package are a particular set of dashboards relating to your manufacturing processes within CBD. So the base cockpit looks like what you saw behind me, but extraction. So if you just wanted to focus on extraction, and you want to know, for instance, the cost by batch, the cannabinoids that are in each batch, what the lot cost is, the average yield, the history, who did you sell, how much to, and how much did you do it over time, what was your yield accordingly, what was your acceptance percentage on your QC test for products that fall under the category of extraction. So you might have an extraction sort of formula, but then it goes into a number of finished goods. All of those, the intermediate batches, the finished good batches, all of those will show on the extraction dashboard. And similarly, if you've got distillation and a different set of products, then you want to see all of the same kinds of things, and you want to separate it out, and that's what you see here. So it's breaking it down by material costs, by labor costs, overhead, and it's also doing k-means and advanced analytics to make sure that you're able to see what are your outliers. So you've got a lot of that native BI, business intelligence functionality built into the system. Anyways, so let's start into the actual demo. So you're going to use the document search or the process map or the common functions to navigate through the documents to see what you're going to work on. If you wanted to get to a sales order, you're going to type it in here, it'll pick it up for you. And what comes with the system are all of these. So you don't notice this time project management on this because that is not part of the scope of Express. You will be able to search through the entire system using the enterprise search. It basically looks through every level of the system, whether that's payments or invoices, sales orders, to give you a result that's tailored to whatever string it is. So as you can see, it's looking through the chart of accounts, it's looking to contact people, it's looking through anything. So I'm going to go into a business partner, which is basically, think of it like your CRM record. It's going to have all of that kind of information directly tied in. There we go. So you've got them categorized into customer groups or vendor groups. So a business partner for us is a customer, a vendor, a lead. Leads will become customers or vendors automatically when they place an order. But when they're in the quote process, they're just a lead, right? So the system automatically converts them. You'll capture phone numbers, emails, tag your salespeople to that particular record. You'll have unlimited contact people. And then you can tag workflows and emails and things to go out to these people when certain criteria are met. You have an unlimited number of ship to and bill tos, and that can be toggled from within the system at any point. And because it's a primarily built on accounting system, you can tag the base price list that this customer uses, the payment terms, the credit limits, and the system will warn you when something goes out of whack. You have the ability to easily reorder. You simply type in, you see their sales history, you type in whatever it is that they're calling you about, hit order top items, and a sales order is automatically generated. And the dashboards and KPIs, they work with you at this stage to give you these sidebar dashboards on the side. So it tells you, okay, this is what I quoted, and this is what I sold it to this customer, and this will change because it's narrowing down this entire analytics package into only the things you need for that particular customer. So that's the advantage of doing it this way. You have the ability to see all your open documents. So orders open until they've been delivered, deliveries open until they've been paid, deliveries open until they've been invoiced, invoices open until they've been paid. So anytime you see a golden arrow, you can drill down. And you've got the order history up here too. And it's going to look at things like seasonality. So you can go into any of these records at any point. And if you've got the appropriate level of authorizations, it's going to show you gross profit percentage and things like that. Let's go to a sales order. So this one is for the CBD isolate chatter. It's pricking the appropriate price list associated with this customer, the payment terms, all of that. So if you wanted to create a sales order or a sales quote or a purchase order, whatever it is, any sales document, all you got to do is type in the customer name or customer code, enter the items, make sure your dates are correct, and that's it. It also tells you how much inventory you have on hand and in stock. Right? And in a make to order scenario, turn the recommendation tab on also. In a make to order scenario, you'll be able to turn this entire sales order into a production batch using the transfer sales order to batch wizard, which allows you to take all of the open orders for this customer or any other customer and turn it into batch tickets. So you have the ability to generate your purchasing production from anywhere. So you just check all of these off and it will automatically go into and build your batches that can then be consolidated by formula, priority, etc. And since I have enough in stock, at this point, I can also generate a pick list directly from here using the generate pick list, or I can do it in a big batch with a pick wizard. Either way is fine. I'm just going to select it off. I can see what my fulfillment percentage is. So I have inventory on hand to satisfy it. I can release all of it or part of it. I release it to pick list, and then it's going to show me all of the lots that are available. Right now, I only have one lot. So if I had multiple lots, they'd all show here. If they were expired, they would not show up, or they would show up in red, depending on what your scenario is. So I'm going to go into a previous sales order for a second. So this one's closed, which means everything's been done as far as this is concerned. And I'm going to view the relationship map. So this is your traceability. So this sales order was delivered on this. So you've got the dates, you've got the amounts, and it's padlocked because everything has been completed for it. You've got the invoice and you've got the payment. So this is the traceability chain right here. All right, so let's just look at a formula, right? So a formula is, at the end of the day, just a mix of raw materials and manufacturing instructions. And this is the formula for a CBD extract, which is currently in status active. So our formulation is basically to revise things when they're in a development stage all the way until they're active. You can only have one active formula at a time, but you can always switch back to a revision if that's what you need to do. You'll note that this is tagged as a process type extraction, which is why any sort of batches that are created based on this formula show up on that extraction dashboard. Any batches, sub batches, anything will show up if it's made using that formula. Anyway, so this formula has materials, it has boilerplates and text. So manufacturing instructions in the order that you want them executed, and it all prints out on the batch ticket. The items themselves are maintained in an inventory unit of measure, but they will auto convert between all of the standard units of measure. So if you are scheduling it in kilograms, you want to convert it to pounds, the system automatically does that, so you can enter it either way. And if you have discrete units of measure, so you're holding this you're buying this inventory in cases, but you're putting in your inventory unit of measure is kilograms, but you're holding it in drums. So in that case, you'll have to define the unit of measure conversion for that discrete unit on the item level. So then the formula is then able to break it out into the appropriate proportions, and then you can size it accordingly. So even at the formula stage, you know what the total material and labor cost is, and you can get it in both weight and by volume. So you can schedule production by eaches or gallons or pounds or whatever. You can also set the loss that happens here at the line level, like what the solutes are, all of that kind of stuff. You'll also capture labor codes. So labor is basically a cost code that maps to a GL account with the hours required to make the standard batch size. So every time I'm making a kilogram of CBD extract, I need 20 minutes of processing labor. So if I'm making 5 kilograms, I'm going to need 5 times that much. So this scales up and down. Formula has consumables, so filters and things like that that are not part of the main formula, but also need to be issued. And byproducts like wax and lipids and waste alcohol, waste terpenes, all of that, that are generated as a result of producing this formula. The revision tab has the fixed costs and default process cells that you want to make this formula on. So you might do your isolation in 2 different chromatography units, but you can set a default that you want it done on. You can also, you'll also set, if you choose, the yield, expected yield percentage. Every time you run this formula, you can set it here, and the system will automatically assume that you need to issue more of the raw materials broken down in order to meet whatever finished good requirement you have. You can also set quality tests at this level. But the formula ultimately is not the basis of production, right? It's the bill of materials. So the bill of materials themselves can be just basically used for packaging, and you'll know, or it can be just an intermediate batch, a finished good, and assembly. Those are the 3 types. But you'll note that it has a different revision number. And so we keep those separate because you might change your packaging, keep your formula constant, or vice versa. So maybe you've got a holiday package that you run and make active until Valentine's Day, and then you want to switch back to the old one. You can do that. You can always switch back and make something obsolete and so on. You can add some additional costs here, issue additional consumables, all of that. But basically, in this case, we're taking CBD isolate and we're filling it in 1 gram units into these glass jars and labeling it. And the bomb explosion will show you all the raw materials and sub batches that went into making 1 unit of the CBD isolate shatter, and you can see what you need to do. That you need to extract it, you need to distill it, you need to isolate it, and then you need to fill it. Right? So that's the base steps, and you can always see how much quantity is required, the units of measure, whether it's make or buy, that kind of thing. This screen is also where you're going to define the machines that you're going to make it on, the runtime, standard batch sizes, etc. And so this is going to where you're going to consider all of the different. So this one, it can be filled on either one of these lines. And if you run it on this line, it's going to take 2 hours to do this. And you can size it or not size it. And so that's what the production scheduling is going to consider. The other setup thing you might consider doing is on the item itself. Here it is where you're going to decide whether this item is handled by FIFO or FIFO or LIFO, how you want the expiration dates to be calculated, whether it's based on the expiry of the nearest raw materials or a manually entered expiration date, what the defaults are, your shelf life, how the lots are auto-generated, what the document numbering series is. But the important thing for you guys, and this comes standard with the CBD vertical, is the quality control tests. So this is where you're going to use specification groups to tag what the lab is going to look at and how. So you can copy it from a specifications group, which rolls in from the test master. And as part of the CBD/hemp vertical, you're going to get a number of predefined tests. You can always add to them, so that's no trouble at all. You'll set the test method, the category, the units, the lead times, etc. And let me show you what all of that looks like. Save that. And these are all tests that are numeric, alphanumeric, or pass-fail. You'll set the expected control upper and lower limits, whether it's printed on a C of A, whether it has to be executed during the time of production, when you buy it, when you do inventory, stability, etc. But ultimately, this is what it looks like. So this is the C of A for your vertical. All you need to do to generate this is enter the item number and the lot number and auto-generate based on the results. We'll talk about the results entry in just a little bit once we get to the manufacturing side, but this is the base procedure. And all of this is entirely built in using this sort of methodology, where we're expecting that you are going to receive some trims and you're going to extract them and turn them into crudes. You might have B2B finished goods that are created as a result, or B2C units. It's not a hard and fast rule. and you're going to distill it, isolate it. So if any of your customers fall within this sort of overall methodology, we should be able to support you 100%. Let's talk about the actual manufacturing. So what you do is you'd run the demand supply report. That is going to be the primary tool within the Express toolkit. So I'm going to put in the demand end date. So what are the so it's going to look through the entire system, look through all of the sources of production, whether that's an inventory transfer request, a sales order, a production order that hasn't been released, all of that, and then look on both sides. Are there material shortages, and how do we deal with them? So I'm going to run that. And you can generate either batch tickets or purchase orders directly from within this report. So it's going to look through literally everything I have in the system between this item type to this item type or whatever, however you want to separate it. And it'll show you all the sources of supply and demand. It'll tell you how much you have in stock. And as a result, you can either print this report or generate the batches or generate the POs. So if I hit generate purchase requisition, it's going to go through this entire list, figure out my vendor lead times, my preferred vendors for each of those items, the warehouse quantity required, any economic order quantity requirements, all of that. So you don't have to really go through and manually adjust this because the system does that for you. But if you want to adjust it on top of that, everything in white you can always add to. And these ones have preferred vendors in there. So you can just combine all of this into a single PO, or a purchase requisition then needs to go for approval. And then you generate, it's a single click, and you get through the entire purchasing process. It's the same thing for generating your batch tickets. So with all that said, let's take a look at an actual batch ticket. Right, so the batch ticket is the hub for your production. And I'll show you how to execute multiple batch tickets at once on a production dashboard and all that. But let's take a look at what a batch ticket is. So the formula and the bill of materials all get rolled up immediately. So you have an expected batch weight and a batch volume and all that, densities, etc. It's figured out the preferred process cell. This one has to be done on distillation. And everything that was in the formula, whether that happens to be a manufacturing instruction, a raw material, labor, all of that will show up here. And there you go. So you'll also note that the quantity required, the 20 kilograms, is what the system expects based on the formula. But in an industry like yours, you might want to adjust the quantities at this stage to reflect what you're going to actually use, based on, say, a dilution report that you maintain separately. And then the thing you might do is you might size it. So we allow you to size this entire formula. If you had like 15 items or raw materials in there, you can size it up based on a batch weight, or size it down, based on a material shortage. If those availability of one materials, you can see how much is required, how much is actual, how much is on hand. So you've got all that, and then you can allocate the lots accordingly. If you hit apply, it'll resize, reduce it up or down, including the labor costs. The next thing you might do is you might either decide to print it, or you might decide to allocate some lots. So you can allocate the lots, by which I mean you can see all of the available lots with the expiration dates and the available quantities, when it came in, any vendor lot number information, what pallets you received it on, all of that kind of stuff. And the system automatically has picked the appropriate lot for you based on FIFO or FIFO, everything that you saw in the initial screen on items on the item master. So if you're happy with that, you just hit auto select and hit update, and the system automatically sends it out to you and changes the status of this from released to allocated. So if something's allocated to a different job, it won't even be available to allocate here. So in most cases, you're just going to accept the allocation methodology, particularly in a startup environment where you don't have unlimited people. You cannot go through this process of allocating these lots, generating a pick ticket, making sure that people are picking only the things that are required, staging it, weighing it, all of those. If all of those procedures are required, we support that, obviously. But in your startup phase, you're probably going to the next thing, do the next thing, which is print the batch. So what this does is it prints out the batch ticket, which is a living document. And if you print it out before you do the allocations, the suggested lots will not be there. And you can, it's of course a report. And it's got room for you to write down what you actually picked. If you've done the allocation, that is, it'll show up. But if you haven't done an allocation, it'll come in blank, and your people out on the floor will write down the lot number that they actually picked, and then you'll go through the issue step and then issue whatever it is that they picked. So you've got options in terms of how you deal with that. And at the end of all of this, I'm going to go to a closed batch. Oh, this one's just allocated. This one's closed. At the end of this, if I were to print the batch, I'm going to see something completely different. It's going to tell me the variances, the lot numbers, the actual cost, the bins, and this is the basis for like your audits and things like that. So it's told you what bin number you picked it from, how much, and if you allocated something differently and there's a variance, things like that, it'll show up. And if you allocated multiple lots, what the QC results were, any packaging information, the labor hours, all of the things that you've accepted as part of the batch process, they show up here. So that's what the batch ticket is. And that's going to be probably the most powerful document in the entire system for most startup processes. Now let's go back to the batch I was working on. Oh, sorry, one last thing before I go there. This is also a place from where you can run the production goods transaction report, which gives you the accurate summary of everything that happened. So what journal entries were hit, what document issues, what document receipts, what type of material, what lot numbers, what bins, what lot status was everything received in or issued out from, and also the unit price. And it breaks it down into the actual lot costing. So even if you're using standard costs, you do have the ability to get your actual lot cost that includes labor and overhead and everything, because there will be variances. And every time you change something in the system, it's going to push that into the variance account in the journal entry. So, and if you want to, so I'm going to just issue something out here. So this right now it's an allocated status. I'm going to actually take all of the suggestions on issue. And if I wanted to pick a different lot this time, I can if I needed to. If there's a change, you allocated one lot, someone went out on the floor and picked something else, and they wrote it down in the batch ticket. You can just change that here in this step, and that is the basis for how this batch gets actually issued. And the status changes to issues. Then you're able to receive it, which you will do in the actuals in the batch close screen. So like on the issue side, you're going to have expected, and then there's actuals. If you receive more for some reason or less because of loss or things like that, you should be able to enter that here. You're expecting to receive right now 18.5 kilograms. You can choose to receive just 18. You might also at this stage enter the actuals on the labor and overhead. So and this ends up reflecting how much you actually want to allocate in terms of the cost to the batch. Right now it's expecting 5 hours and 13 minutes of processing cost code, but someone out on the floor called in sick and you needed someone else, and now it's ballooned up to 8 hours. You can make that adjustment here and it'll reflect, and the difference goes into that variance account that we talked about. You can choose to, at this stage, also assign a lot number to the batch. So if you have an entire production run and you'd like to assign a lot number and you want that lot number to propagate entirely through and assign which bin it goes into, all of that stuff, you can do the assign lot number before you even receive anything. But in this case, I'm going to do both those at the same time. But it doesn't have to be that way. So in this case, I'm going to decide which bin I am receiving it in. I can have this automatically filled in if I have defaults on the item itself. and I'm receiving everything into the lot status QC hold. And QC hold is a lot status that has bin restrictions and lot restrictions, transaction restrictions. And those restrictions are important for quality because anything that is in status QC hold would not be allowed in the following types of transactions. You cannot issue it out into production. You cannot pick it. You cannot transfer it. It has to stay there until quality QA releases it. And then when you're done, you're going to simply close the batch, or you can partial close it if you expect to receive more. So if you're receiving at the top of the hour, you're receiving some amount, and at the bottom of the hour, you're receiving some amount. You'll hit partial close, but right now I'm just going to close the batch. And from here, let's go into the QC. So all of the so everything that you entered in the formula and the bill of materials will show up in production as a QC. So production QC, right now it's in status new. I'm going to release it. If I have an external lab scenario that I'm waiting for, I'll just select them from my list of vendors. So I have to set up my external lab as a separate vendor. Their number goes up here. Hit update. And then you can see the battery of tests that need to be performed, whether C of A relevant, et cetera. And it's taking the upper and lower control limits based on what you set at the item level. So every time you make a distillate, this is the range you're allowed. And so basically, whether you manually enter it here as 650, it automatically changes to pass, and you go through the entire list. You might send it out to an external lab, and then they come back with it, and then you manually enter all of these, or whether it comes out as a CSV and you import it, it's basically filling it into this table. And once everything is filled in on this table, the status will go to in progress. And from the QC dashboard, you'll be able to view things that are in progress, and you'll just go in here, and when QC is ready, they'll hit evaluate QC, which basically accepts the results of whatever tests were run in the lab. So I'm just going to go through and fill out a few things. 24. So this one now failed automatically as a result because it fell out of the range. If you want the C of A to to show up in the format that I showed you, you just have to make sure that on the test master that you are categorizing it in the header that you want. So the test method is the header in which it appears in the C of A. So if it's another cannabinoid, just make sure it shows up in a cannabinoid profile.
Yep.
You can add a residual solvent or terpenes or whatever, just categorize it correctly. It'll show up. Just blah, blah, blah. Yes, I'm going to pass everything so you can see it. All of this is manual, but QC will also be able to assign it to a tester and all that. So once it's evaluated, the QC designer right now is not tested. Now this will change to, in this case, rejected because I failed one. Now QA has the ability to say, you know what, or QC has the ability to say, you know what, I'm willing to take this result. So my C of A will still say that, but I'm willing to accept it and it's ready to be released. And I can change the status manually here if I give them the right kinds of permissions. Right now I'm going to accept it, even though it failed. So that the test record will show that. And you can always duplicate a sample. So you can set the sample size here, duplicate the sample, send it to a different place, all of that, and you'd still be managing it through the same CSV if that's your process. So all of these will basically just be headers. It'll be a template, you pop it in. Make sure you hit the right QC order number, as this is the defining factor. You have to make sure the QC order number and the lot number are correct, then the rest is pretty trivial. It doesn't matter what the lab gives you what result. The format will be the same. And when it's done, you can hit QA approval. This is what you need in order to move things from one lot status to another. So the final release. So in the final release, if everything in the available quantity QC whole in the available quantity 18, if I've passed it, it goes into the status. If it goes into fail, it goes into that status. And all of those can be different statuses depending on what your process is. and you can set different restrictions for each of them. So QA has the final ability to approve it and send it out into the world. Now it is available to pick, to issue, all of that good stuff. And pretty much all of the production that you saw can be done in a single batch, and it says your lot status changed successfully. All of that can be done in a single transaction from the production dashboard. So it shows you put in the start and end dates, and you'll see all of the batches. It's all color coded based on what statuses are allowed. I'm going to just only show. I want to see all the ones. I can do all my batch operations, my releases, holds, etc. from here. I just have to. I put the checkbox all the way over there. Good. So yeah, you'll just check all of these off, and then you can run the batch operations like in a set. You can run the material availability report to make sure that you don't have any shortages. You can print your labels, you can print your batch tickets, all of that directly from here as well. So that's basically what production and quality and all of that stuff looks like. But ultimately, what we're trying to do is show you how our traceability works. So this is a lot traceability dashboard, and this is the heart of what the system was built around. So it tracks your movements back and forth. If you use where use, which is what I've got now, it's going to give you, you put in the lot numbers or the vendor lot number. You can see the QC details. You can see what's on hand. Let me see if I've got anything of this on hand right now. So I can see that these were the lot details that happened. This is a different lot number, obviously, from 5002. I have nothing on hand, but I have more of that available, how much of that's allocated production. So I've got all of that kind of traceability, and it's all nodal. So this item, cannabinoids dry powder, went into all of these different batches on all of these different dates. And when the finished good at this had an expiration date of X and a receipt date, et cetera, and it'll explode out all the way until you get to the sales order on which it went out to a customer. And you can zoom in and out. You can export it out to Excel, to PDF, or view it in a grid that breaks it out accordingly. If you use lot explosion, you go the other way, breaking it down from the finished good right down to the purchase orders for the raw materials that went into the lot. So yeah, so that's the base of what we do. And finally, for reporting, this entire database, most of it anyways, is turned into an ODBC connection, which you can then, which basically pushes out of you into Excel, where you can then build out a pivot table or a pivot chart, all of that stuff. You can build your reporting out on the fly. Right, so this is stuff everyone's used to. You save it, and then it inherits the permissions of your user. So any user who is of your user group or higher is able to come into this, put in their credentials, and anytime in the future, you save it in a network location you're choosing, anytime in the future they open it, it'll auto refresh. So you've got set and forget reporting that's based in Excel, things you're familiar with, and that ultimately covers pretty much everything I had on here for you.